Thank you, Danny. Last Sunday, Carter and Andy helped me recover from some technical difficulties. I was very excited when I first came here to, you have access and had provided a large screen. As I get older, the larger things are, I can see them better. And actually, I can read, and but I have to get very close, or sometimes far away, to read something. And this really helps me. Almost all the books and news that I read anymore, I do it on a tablet or a pad because I can make the letters any size that I want. And so this is helpful. Also, I just enjoy pictures so much, and the Lord has blessed me to be able to find. We had one of a background photo several weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago, of a warrior facing a big fiery dragon. And Avery said, "Is that the devil?" And I said, "Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's the devil." And so it's a little more complicated than that. But anyway, and something was wrong with our projector. I was pretty sure it was our projector, though we've had some problems with monitors lately. So I was dreading having to spend part of my Saturday yesterday working on that complication. And Andy sent me a text. He'd been down here and he had us back in gear, got us back fixed. So thanks to those two men. Appreciate them. And you tell them thank you too. And you know, when I first became a Christian, everybody who walked into the doors of the church had a Bible with them. And people don't bring their Bibles to even to church much anymore. Me and Randy do because we're old and we just, but it's good to, sometimes people say, well, if he's just going to read it to us, it's going to be up on the screen. We don't put during the heaviest part of the pandemic, we did put the words of when we didn't want to use hymnals at all, we put the words of the songs up there. We've done that. But anyway, just by way of thanks to those men. When we moved to Alabama, Danny and I both were born in Pontiac, Michigan. We came here. My mom and dad are from Limestone County, and so they came over in here far enough away from Limestone County that they couldn't make them pick cotton. Though my mother still went back from time to time to pick some cotton. I tell people I've picked cotton. I just kind of fooled around. I was just a little boy. And I really like to throw those, you know, before a cotton plant blooms, it's a little bitty hard pod. You can knock your little brother in the head with that from a long way off. Boy, that thing looks whiz. Like that. Boom! Dirt clods to throw, just all kinds of nonsense, chasing the grasshoppers and that kind of thing. Someone put a picture on Facebook this week that I thought, look at that. And you know what I remember? I remember that we would stop on the way. Actually, Mama would, when I was a little boy, there was a man that they used to pick cotton for when she was a little girl, and she was making ends meet. And so she'd go there even when we were little kids and pick cotton in her time. And we would stop at a little store on the way to the field. And I don't know if this strikes a bell, but we would buy bologna and cheese and crackers. And I think for just a few dollars, and she always had a big old jug of sweet tea that you could spread on toast with a knife. It was really sweet tea. And nobody had told us that you might be able to put lemon in tea. I don't guess I'd ever seen a lemon before. But I knew all of that was in a basket that Mama had brought. And what I was really thinking about until dinner time, about 12 o'clock, they'd get underneath the shade tree. Everybody'd come in out of the field there. It'd be her and her sisters and her aunts and uncles. It was all kind of like a big family job. And we'd get underneath that tree. And I remember as a little boy, that bologna, they'd cut it off a big old log of bologna at the store. You know what we had for our sweet tooth? Moon pie.
Yeah.
Moon pie or vanilla wafers. Well, somebody had a picture like that on Facebook this week. I said, look at that. lunchtime. And you just see the cotton rows out there just about in the background, and they were all there. They had actually a little table out. We didn't have a little table. I don't know what we spread on, about the trunk of a car, I think, back the tailgate of a pickup truck. And everybody'd eat, and then they'd go back at it, and I'd start throwing things at Danny again. When we moved to Alabama, we started living in Flint, a little town, Flint, just down the road here, down Highway 31. The main street in Flint is Mill Street. And right there, just as soon as you turn on to Mill Street, there was a big brick building there. And it was the Flint Baptist Church. It had started out as the Pisgah Baptist Church. And that became our home. And we didn't attend very often. I remember going there, though, and I know that we never missed a Bible school. Every once in a while, we'd go there and miss Smallwood's Sunday school class. And I remember that they didn't have air conditioning or even fans, but they had those big old tall windows in the sanctuary, in the auditorium. And they would raise those up, every one of them. And you could hear everything, every bird outside, every frog, whatever was going on. And every Sunday, and we'd come in from Sunday school, you could hear the singing all through Flint. There was an apartment building there since that church has gone away or fell down or got relocated. The pastorium is still standing. It's the same place it was across the street from the church. But there's just not even a foundation. There's just an empty lot there now where the Flint Baptist Church used to be. If you turn there at the church and go straight back after a left turn on the mill, you'd see the Flint School. It was elementary and what we would call today a junior high school. It went to the 9th grade. And it's been a long time since we've been back to Flint, but Flint became our home. And it was a place that I remember that when we went there that nothing ever happened. There were friendly people there, and they were nice people, and they dotted all the I's, they crossed all the T's. They did Sunday school, and they passed out the bulletins, and they opened the doors. They had the lights on. It was pleasant and nice, and everything was clean. And they came in and they did it. And I remember that whenever we went there, that I just thought, why are we doing this? Because it's just exactly the way it was the last time we came. It just seemed like it's just a total and complete waste of time to me, just as a little boy. And then something happened. It wasn't a dynamic preacher or a great singing sensation. It wasn't a change in their order of service. They still sang the doxology every single Sunday morning. That's how they started every worship service, from the old building to the new. And I hadn't been in a long time, and I was a teenager at the time. And I went there, and something was different. Well, they weren't jumping on top of the pews or waving their hands about. They weren't shouting and hollering and rolling in the floor. Something was wrong, going on. Not nothing wrong, but something was right. Something was happening. People were giving their lives to Christ. People who had never heard the gospel before. People's lives were being touched and changed. And I had never seen, except maybe just one person in my entire experience with that church, I'd never seen maybe just one person walk down or walk forward during the aisle, during the invitation and walk down the aisle. Danny and I were saved during that time, and a lot of our friends and kids that we grew up with. And God did a wonderful and powerful work. And I could testify to you all day long of all the different things that happened in that church to change it. And it became different. And I began to look forward to going there every Sunday. I know that there are probably some of you that on Sunday morning, you don't want to go. Maybe you're here today, and you really wish you were not here. You wish maybe you were somewhere that was more interesting or exciting. I've been to churches much like that. But we got to a place where we anticipated going to church because we wanted to see what was going to happen. No, we didn't handle snakes or speak in tongues. But I could see that people's lives, I could see on their faces and in their lives. And I knew some of the meanest people in town were coming and giving their lives to Christ. Another one of the people that got saved during that time was a man named David Kelly. He was an auto mechanic. He did small engine repair, and he gave his life to Christ. Not only that, God called him to preach. David Kelly, for many years now, has been pastoring churches all across North Alabama and here in the South. He's a friend of ours. We knew he and his family. His wife was a precious lady, and his wife and her mother and sister sang like angels. Well, his mother-in-law, his sister-in-law, and his wife have all gone on to be with the Lord. But I've asked David Kelly to come and be our guest speaker, preacher, on Homecoming Sunday, which is Sunday week, June the 4th at 11 o'clock. I want you to come and meet David. He pastored for many years at the 16th Avenue Baptist Church here in Morgan Association. David can tell of those testimonies, and he was a part of that time in our church. I wish that I could tell you that I'd ever been in a church in my life where it was just exciting and thrilling and God filled every single service and every Sunday. I've never been in a church like that anywhere in my life. God seems to just come down and just boom, and things happen. I always pray for a movement of God like that. Did you hear several months ago that there was a college here in the United States? They were just going to chapel, and somebody started praying, somebody started testifying, and for about 6 weeks there, the place was filled to capacity of people just coming from everywhere in the world to see what God was doing. It's unexplainable. Come and be with us at Homecoming. You know, as I travel around, I do things, if I do much shopping around in Priceville, I meet people all the time, and they say, you know, I used to attend Walnut Grove Baptist Church, and I say, yeah, I know, a lot of people did. And I'm still there. You come on back, come on home. And I don't even ask them, why did you leave? Where did you go? And did we make you mad? Come on back, we'll try again. Who knows? Homecoming is June the 4th. Let's go to the next slide there, Carter. If you'd like to go, I think Danny and I have made a commitment. We're going to head over at the Prost Arena at the Von Braun Civic Center on the Friday and Saturday before Father's Day in June. The former Vice President Pence is going to be there. Rick Burgess is going to be there. It's just going to be, of course, my favorite preacher is always Phil. Men, boys, if you'd like to come or go, we don't stay in a motel. We just go over there, come back Friday night, and go over there Saturday morning, finish up the Gridiron Men's Conference. Let's look at the next slide. Father's Day is on June the 18th. We're going to celebrate fathers. We may not have pictures of all of them. It's hard to find pictures of Dad. But you come and celebrate on June the 18th with us that Sunday, be Father's Day. We're going to celebrate all men and fathers. All right, let's go on. Be praying. If you'd like to be involved in Vacation Bible School, let Terry know, or Liz, let Danny know, or me. That's going to be on Saturday, July 15th from 9 a.m. to 1. Twists and turns, Vacation Bible School. Let's go on. Just some things that are on our calendar. We're still making a difference. We're doing things that matter. I hope that you are involved in our Christmas box ministry. During the month of May, we do clothing kind of things, little flip-flops and little shorts and dresses and little tops, onesies and things like that, that we put in our Christmas boxes. It's something, and if you need more information, see Andy. He's our missions director, Andy Crow. But be involved in that. That's something that we do. Doesn't matter how many of us there are. And even though there's only a few of us, we send out 200 boxes every year. Every year. All right, be a part of that if you can. Contribute. You know, go buy something. There's a list. And if you need that list, let me know, because we do certain things during a certain month. And we're getting just about to the end of the road. We're going to make some catch up. Find out where we're lacking. But be a part of our ministries, what we're doing, what we're involved in, and how God's using us. A part of our offerings that we contribute each month go to the Morgan Baptist Association, disaster relief, the caring place, the thrift store, and all that, supporting our Director of Missions, Brother Ken Blackwood. That's a part of what we do. We support and pray for the Phil Walker Ministries, for Jason Reynolds Ministries, for Michael Mason Ministries. These are ministries that we're involved in and that we're a part of. We contribute to them and we support them. And they come here and they build us up and encourage us as well. Be a part of that. And we can do a lot of good work for God. Talitha Kumi. Those are two Aramaic words. Strange that this story is told by the gospel writer Matthew, Luke, and Mark. They all tell the story of Jairus' daughter. Jairus came to find Jesus. It says he was a ruler of the synagogue. Well, generally speaking, the rulers of the synagogues and the Jewish rulership and leadership disapproved of Jesus. They thought he was a nut. They'd already made up their mind. And things changed with Jairus because he had a little daughter that was 12 years old. And she was very, very, very sick. And Jairus had heard of all the wonderful things that this man was doing. Jesus might possibly be the Messiah. Well, regardless of what was popular and how he was being pressured to treat Jesus, his daughter was very, very sick, and that changed the way he felt about Jesus. And they had probably called in healers or doctors or physicians. They had probably tried remedies of every kind. We don't really know what had been wrong with the little girl. But he came to Jesus. He came to Jesus and he said, I just want you to come and touch her. I believe if you'll come touch her, you can make her well. Last Sunday we looked at the woman who touched the hem of Jesus' garment. A part of the process that allows a woman to become a mother had become a curse to her. And she probably wasn't a mother, and because of an issue of blood, she was not capable of motherhood. And she sought to just simply touch Jesus because for 12 years she had been suffering from this affliction. Jesus, again, was her only hope. Sometimes when we think about religion we think about the Bible, or people think about God, they say, well, it's about God being mad and God punishing us and us doing the wrong things, and it's about God being unhappy, and the Bible's a lot about do this and don't do that, and don't do this and don't do that, when that is just really just a very small part. No, God's not mad at us. He's not out to get us. He's not trying to find us so he can punish us. He loves us. He cares for us. And a lot of people have been sold just a bag of rocks about God. And you've let the devil perhaps even convince you that God intends to harm you and all he wants to do is oppress you or keep you down, or he wants to turn you into someone who has no joy and no reason for celebration or laughter or happiness. He just wants to put you in a life of grinding religiosity. Nothing but going to church and being a good person. That's nonsense. I have more joy in my life than I could ever imagine. I'm so grateful and thankful for the life that I have lived so far. I'm excited about the life that I'm going to live for the remainder of my days. And then when I finish this life, I'm going to a place that's beyond imagination because of him. You've been misled, or you've been lied to, or you've chosen to be negative-minded about what the Lord Jesus can do. That woman's life was changed. Jairus' life and the life of his family is about to be changed. Jesus loves us, not just because the Bible tells us so. That man who'd been oppressed and badgered and beaten by unclean spirits for so many years, Jesus told him that the very best thing that you can do, and what I want you to do, is not to traipse around after me and to follow me like a religious alkalite. He says, I just want you to go back home and tell your friends and your family what the Lord has done for you. People who really know the Lord have things to tell about what Jesus has done for them. You say, well, Jesus has never done anything for me. Well, he pretty much just does things for his children. Everybody else is pretty much like all the people that gather in. They say, we'd like you to leave town, please. If they're, look at your life. If at every turn and at every avenue in your life, you're telling God, leave me alone. God said, okay, I'm going to leave you alone. The Gadarenes said, you sure did wreak a lot of damage on our pigs, 2,000 of them. We just wish you'd leave town, and Jesus did. It amazes me that as I share my faith with people, people say, well, God never helps me. God never touches my life. God never answers my prayers. Their life is a day by day by day refusal and rejection of God, saying, God, stay back. Keep your hands off. Leave me alone. And then they wonder why God doesn't ever bless them or touch them or move in their lives. If you hate God and you're always pushing him away, that's where he's going to be. He's going to be out there. Let's look at the scripture passage here. Go to that next slide. Turn with me in your Bible, if you would, to Mark's Gospel, chapter 5, verse 21. Now when Jesus crossed over again by the boat to the other side, a great multitude gathered to him, and he was by the sea. And behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue came, Jairus by name, and when he saw him, he fell at his feet, and he begged him earnestly, saying, my little daughter lies at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, that she may be healed, and she will live. So Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him. I'm kind of introverted myself. I like to be alone. I like solitude and quiet and aloneness. I was telling my son the other day, I found a welcome mat. He was talking about we were putting keys under the welcome mat. Johnny, I found a welcome mat that I'm going to order from Amazon. It's a welcome mat. You put it by your back door and it says, you have no reason for being here. When you're sitting around the house at 8 o'clock and somebody knocks on the door, what do you say? Who in the world? Or something like that. Who in the world is, what the heck? Do you think I go and throw open the door and say, welcome to the... No, I go, where's my gun? I got to find my pistol. Where's that shotgun at? I got to saw off shot. Somebody's knocking on the door. When I come to church, I wish that there were pews packed full of people. I wish that a lot of people would come. That would just mean a lot more people are hearing the gospel and worshiping him. And I wish more and more people were coming to church. Our church, sitting in these pews. I wish we had a crowd. I wish we had a throng. We could change the name of our church. The Walnut Grove Baptist Throng. They thronged him. Let's look at the next slide. Jump on down to verse 35. This is after, the woman came out there and touched the hem of Jesus' garment. It was kind of an interruption. While he was still speaking, he was talking to that woman. He says, your faith has made you whole. Some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house who said, your daughter is dead. Why trouble you the teacher any further? I became a pastor. I remember going home to our little apartment in Nashville, Tennessee. We lived right beside Belmont College. And the church, the Fosterville Baptist Church, had voted to call me as their pastor that morning. I was 20 years old. My wife was 18 years old. And I sat on the bed all night long and said, well, you got what you wanted. Now what are you going to do? Oh, my Lord, I'm a pastor now. I remember when I first became their pastor, they told me that Miss Lorraine Lynch's husband was in the nursing home. So I went to visit him on a Saturday, probably one of my first or second Saturdays there as their pastor. And I went there to the nursing home. They said, well, Mr. Lynch has been transferred to the hospital. And the hospital was just across the street. So I said, okay. It's Saturday morning. I was going over to see Mr. Lynch. Him and his wife, they lived just down the street from the pastorium there. And I'd met her when she was at church, but she told her husband had been sick. And then I heard her say that he had been admitted to a nursing home there in Murfreesboro, Alabama. Pardon me, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Murfreesboro, Tennessee. So I went in, and I went to the nurse's station because it was Saturday, and there wasn't anybody at the welcome desk or to the lobby. So I went to the nurse's station there on the first floor, and I was waiting there for someone, and there was a lot of bustling and running around going on. I was waiting patiently. And I stand there beside the nursing station. And I looked right down on the nurse's station desk right there, and there was a death certificate lying there. It had already been filled out and signed, and it was for Mr. Lynch. So a nurse came by and I said, "Has Mr. Lynch passed away?" One of the pastors I served with as youth director, he used to get in the pulpit and he'd say somebody expired. Elizabeth Bain has expired. It kind of sounded like her due date, or she went bad or something. She was moldy. Expired. And I said, has Mr. Lynch passed away? He said, yeah, just a few minutes ago. The coroner just left. And I said, well, is Miss Lynch here? She went home to change clothes and to eat breakfast and to clean up and to come back. So she doesn't know. Oh my. I'm 20 years old and I'm a pastor. Miss Lynch is going to come into that hospital to visit her husband after she gets everything sorted out and kind of gets a little bit of a break. And I've never told this kind of news to anybody. We do it badly, I think, sometimes, but I had already learned this is kind of the way to do it. Your daughter is dead. Kind of like that. I came home from, David Kelly and I used to drive to college together. We went to Southeastern Bible College, where I went for one semester there and transferred my credits. But we pulled up in the driveway, and he dropped me off after school one day. This was back in 1977. No, this was in 1976. This was in 1976. It was just a few months after we were married, and we were living with Terry's grandmother. And Mama came out of the house to meet me as David dropped me off. And what she was trying to tell me was that Terry had been in a fender bender. Someone had bumped into her Pinto at work. She worked for Olin Mills. And that Beth, Terry's mother, who lived down at the foot of the hill, had come up there to tell her about the accident and that she was going to Olin Mills to make sure everything was all right. So Mama came running out of the house to tell me, and all she could get out of her mouth was, "She's gone. She's gone. My mother-in-law is gone. She's gone." I said, "What?" She said, Terry. And I said, "What?" "She's gone." So Mama wasn't very good at this either. Just like we say here now, that near scared me to death. Do you know that those kind of things happen to people all the time? I mean, really happen to people. I mean, they really do. We had heard just a little while before that the little boy who served as our ring bearer in our wedding ceremony had died when they were going to take out his adenoids and put tubes in his ears, and he died on the operating table. He was 4 years old. Tran-buckled it. So our lives were not empty of hurt and pain. But since that time, I remember waiting for Miss Lynch to walk in through the door. "Miss Lynch, I'm really sorry to tell you, but when I got here just a few minutes ago, they informed me that Mr. Lynch had died." You know, we've all sat with people at the hospital, we've gone to the hospital, we've been in the hospital, and sometimes you got to go get something to eat. And, you know, you're not doing anybody any good if you're just sitting around there and you're in the same old clothes for 2 or 3 days. You need to go and kind of change, come back as quickly as you can. And we were staying with my dad just almost completely around the clock, and we were there all the time, and we just knew he was getting worse and worse and worse. But We didn't have any idea how long it would go on. And so Liz was the only one of our family who was with my dad when he passed. And I'm so grateful that someone that we love, and he loved better than life, he loved Liz. And we all love Liz, but God chose her to be there. And that's not something you volunteer for. You know, I'd like to be there. I want to be the one. It's not pleasant. But she's the one who had to call us to tell us that our dad was gone. They couldn't get a hold of me several years ago when I worked out in Scottsboro. And my brother finally was able to get the plant people where I worked in Scottsboro to run me down to let me know that our mom had passed. Your daughter is dead. They've gone on. They've moved on. They've passed away. What? You know, if you're ever put in that position, a lot of those euphemisms are gentle ways of saying things. Sometimes just won't do. Sometimes it just has to be like this. Your daughter is dead. Why trouble you, the teacher, any longer? Why trouble you, the teacher, any longer? You know, when someone is dead, we feel like, well, that's it. That's all there is. There's no hope. There's nothing now. No medicine, no surgery, no love or kindness or tenderness. There's nothing that can be done. There's nothing that Jesus can do. You're just bothering him. You're just troubling him. Let me tell you something on the basis of this story right here. Danny and I grew up, our uncle taught us a song. It's called, "It's Me Again, Lord." It's me again, Lord. It's a wonderful song. It's kind of an old country gospel song. I've got prayers that need an answer. It's me again, Lord. I've got problems that I can't solve. Now, I don't mean to worry you. I don't mean to worry you. Let me tell you something. I want to tell you this. You listen to me. You're no trouble at all. You're not bothering him at all. If he belongs to you and you belong to him, you're not bothering Jesus when you reach out to him, when you cry out to him. There's no trouble. Let's go on to the next slide. As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Don't be afraid, only believe." And he permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. Then he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue and saw a tumult, and those who wept and wailed loudly. I remember I went with my pastor when I was just a new Christian. We went to there was a little boy that lived across the street from my mom and dad-in-law. He was just a teenager. He was about 15 years old, and he got killed on a motorcycle accident. And that family they wailed and lamented. They were broken. Their little boy was dead. I remember he had a little brother named Roy. And I remember I was over at Terry's home the day that he died. And little Roy, he was a couple of years, I guess he's about Joey's age. He came running up to the Evans house. He was over there all the time. He was a pest. Lily, come over there every time. About supper time every time he showed up. Roy would come over there. Roy came and knocked on the door. And nobody knew anything, hadn't heard any news, hadn't heard about any tragedy. And there was Roy. His face was tear-stained, and he was frantic. "What's wrong, Roy?" "I just wanted to tell you that my brother's dead." He turned around, weeping and sobbing, and ran back home. My pastor and I, they didn't go to church anywhere. We'd visit with them, tried to get them to come to church, and we never got to darken the doors of the church. Never got to witness to them or share with them. Didn't know much about them. Several kids in the family. Very, very poor family. Weren't doing well. we tried to love on them, tried to care for them. And so my pastor and I, we went to the funeral when the boy was going to be buried. There was some misunderstanding. There was the local pastor in the neighborhood. Evidently, they thought that he would perform the funeral ceremony, the memorial service, and he didn't show up. They probably thought they asked him, or somebody thought they asked him, and they didn't. I can never conceive of them asking him and him refusing. But he wasn't there. And I remember they came back to my pastor and asked him if he would, just right there on the spot, if he would lead the memorial service. And he said yes. He did a wonderful job. But I remember during that service that, as often happens at funerals, the family came by and they were so emotionally devastated and so hurt, literally screaming and wailing, weeping and crying for the loss of this little boy. Broke my heart. I was about 15 years old myself. When he came in, he said to them, "Why make you this commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." Now, I've spent many years following the Lord, and I hardly ever know what he means or what he's talking about. I don't always understand him. He's on a completely different eternity than I am. We're on a different kind of phase. But listen, I have learned that if Jesus says it's cold and I think it's hot, I change my mind to cold. She's not dead. Let me tell you what, that girl was dead. But to Jesus and his reality, and let me tell you something, his reality is all that matters. Yeah. Let's go on to the next slide. They ridiculed him, but when he had put them outside, if you can watch, they're one of the most powerful, wonderful scenes that is done by The Chosen. It's this scene where Jairus' daughter is healed. These are professional mourners, and Jesus is asking them to leave, and they're just arguing with him. I like it because Simon Peter grabs one of them in a Vulcan neck pinch, and he goes, and Peter and he gets him out of the house. I like that. It's a little bit of an ad lib, I guess. He took the father and the mother of the child and those that were with him and entered where the child was lying. And then he took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha, kumi," which is translated, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." Immediately the girl arose and walked, for she was 12 years of age. And they were overcome with amazement. And he commanded them strictly that no one should know it, and said that something should be given to her to eat. Evidently, being dead makes you hungry. Look at that last slide there, Carter. We're done. And we're reading this in English. That's what we speak. We don't always do it well. I talk to people all over the country every day. And sometimes they say, "Are you from Mississippi?" And I'll say, "No, I'm not from Mississippi." What's wrong with you? Do I sound ignorant? I'm from Alabama. We wear shoes and everything. I've read books. The lady paid me a great compliment. She sounded like she was of foreign descent, and I was helping her with a bit locker recovery. It's 48 numbers long. She said, "I want to thank you. You've spoken so slowly and so clearly. You've been so wonderful. I just want to thank you for being so patient with me." And I said, "Well, you're very kind. And I'm glad. I was trying to." She didn't know I was pulling my hair out. Keep that off the phone. The New Testament, this English translation was taken from the Greek version of our oldest copies of the Scriptures. But Jesus and all of his disciples spoke in kind of a pidgin, colloquial Hebrew that was called Aramaic. Jesus spoke Aramaic. Now, Matthew tells this story and Luke tells this story. Mark is here telling it, the gospel writer Mark. Mark is the only one who, for some reason, says, I want to tell you exactly what Jesus said. And that, when I look at that, I say, Mark, what are you saying? And he says, I don't want you to think that these are magical words, but this is the most amazing thing. If you get to watch this, the chosen scene, there's nobody more astounded in this room than Peter, James, and John. Their mouths are open, and they've seen Jesus do some amazing things. He's calmed a storm. They've never seen him do this. Mark says, I want you to know, I'm not making this story up. This is not just a bedtime story for Christians. He says, I want you to know that this is so important. I want you to know exactly what he said. Now, I don't know which translation you're using, and in the Chosen, he says, little lamb, arise. Talitha, actually in Aramaic, means little one, child, little one. Kumi, and it is simply, come, little one, come. And she opened her eyes. Having someone that we care about and that we love, sometimes just someone that we know, to die is the most terrible thing we'll ever face. Most of us, we really don't think about dying ourselves. We can't imagine that I might die, that you might die. We know that we're going to die. Let me tell you this. I know we try, when someone dies, we say, I'm sorry. We're responsible. We don't know what to say. I'm sorry for your loss. It's just what you say. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't help. I try to stay so far away from cliches and quaint sayings. You know what? Sometimes what the best thing to say is? Nothing. Just put your arm around them and cry. I have found that tears speak more than words. And Jesus didn't raise all the dead little girls in Capernaum. He didn't raise all the dead little boys or all the dead loved ones or people. When Jesus came, he didn't stop death in its tracks and say, nobody's going to die from now on. But I want you to know, as I said last Sunday, when God created this world, death was not on the agenda. Death was not a part of it. Death was not included. God said, here's a forbidden fruit. And I'm telling you, you can do anything else in the entire world that you want, but you just can't do this, because in the very day that you do this, you're going to invite something into my creation that I had no intention. He says, you're going to die. And it didn't just mean that they were going to fall over dead. It meant that death is going to be a part of life. And it is. Now it is a part of life. You know what God has done? The most terrible, awful thing that you and I ever have to think about is death. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Paul says, the last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. You know what? God arranged it and changed everything so that the door, the gate, the way that you and I get from this world to the next world, the door is death. It's the most terrible. It ends our life, and yet it is exactly what begins our next life. Yes, there is life after death. There is something next. There's something after this, and the way we get to it is through death. So why didn't you just do away with death? Death is something that we have and do choose. We're always choosing forbidden fruit. We're always doing things that we're not supposed to do. We're always rejecting God. We're always saying no to God. We're always telling God to leave us alone, and it always has consequences, and the wages of sin is always death. We don't have many flowers around our house. When my wife touches them, they die. She doesn't have a green thumb. This week, a little dog that's been in our family for about 15 or 20 years died. She's been kind of in that bless her heart stage for a long time anyway. She had a brother, and he's been gone for about a year and a half, 2 years. It just about killed us when he died. But Roxy was just so stupid that she didn't even seem to miss Winston when he was gone. And we thought, well, that's good. I just thought she'd just grieve and cry and mope around. But I never saw a look on her. She always had her tongue stuck out. And I never did, all this time, I never did see a single look on her face where she would just look at me, and she loved me so much. And she always came to see me when I went over to Carice's. They lived with us for a long time when Carice was in college. They were our grand dogs before we had grandchildren. I never saw a look in Roxy's face where she was saying, "Where's Winston?" I never saw that look at all. Didn't have a clue. That's all right. That's good. She's just happy. She passed away this week, and it just about killed my little granddaughters. Harper doesn't get it. And I tell you what, it was really, really, really hard on Carice. This was her little baby for a long time. You know, when a pet, a cat or a dog, and you think, well, that's just silly. Well, no, it's really not. Something that loves you so much and gives you so much joy, something that you know is just from the Lord. This is a creature that God has made. And you say, well, that's not silly at all. And I've been so touched and moved by other people, too, when their beloved pet has passed away. There was a series a number of years ago called Judging Amy. It was about a woman who was a lawyer, and her mother had been a judge, and so it was about her and her mother. And her mother was very matter of fact, very unemotional, straight to it, cut the facts. And during this whole episode, everything was just, she was just biting people's head off, and things were harsh and difficult. And at the very, what in the world's going on with her? And at the end of the episode, you find Kathy Bates plays her mother, and she's out in the backyard, and she's got a digging trowel, and she's just digging. And so the neighbor comes over and says, "Man, things have been crazy at your house." Everything? She said, "Yeah, everything's fine." I said, "We're going to be all right. You go on back to your house and leave things alone." And her neighbor just stood there and watched. Then Kathy Bates' character looked up and she said, "My dog died today." Jesus is the resurrection and the life. No, he didn't raise all the dead. And if you have a little girl or a little boy or someone that you love and they die, more than likely Jesus is not going to come to your house and raise them up. Because death is still a part of the story that we have to finish. We've got to finish this. When Jesus died on the cross, that was really the whole point. He took death. Paul says, "He who knew no sin became sin for us." I like the song. There's a song that I used to sing many years ago. It says, "Sin died, but death also died. The day death died, Jesus nailed it to the cross. And yes, it is still very active, and yes, it still takes us. And it's going to be the last enemy. Paul the Apostle in the last chapter, which is the resurrection chapter in 1 Corinthians 15, he says, all right. He says, Jesus is the resurrection and the life. No, he didn't raise all the dead. And if you have a little girl or a little boy or someone that you love and they die, more than likely Jesus is not going to come to your house and raise them up. Because death is still a part of the story that we have to finish. We've got to finish this. When Jesus died on the cross, that was really the whole point. He took death. Paul says, he who knew no sin became sin for us. I like the song. There's a song that I used to sing many years ago. It says, sin died, but death also died. The day death died, Jesus nailed it to the cross. And yes, it's still very active, and yes, it still takes us. And it's going to be the last enemy. Paul the Apostle in the last chapter, which is the resurrection chapter in 1 Corinthians 15, he says, all right. He says, the pain and the anguish of sin is death. But he says, grave, where's your victory? Death, where's your sting? He's saying, okay, when life comes at you like that, all they can do is take your life. And just as soon as you die, you wake up. Paul said, for me to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. I've been with many, many people as they've left this world, held their hands, I've sang them out. We sang to my daddy every song that he wanted us to sing. And everybody would come down to the hall of the hospital to see what the singing was all about. Dad wanted us to sing, we'd sing, so we'd sing in my own home. I've been with people who see things and hear things, people who smile, people who light up, people who breathe their last breath. And I know that they're not alone. One of these days I'm going to be lying there and it's going to be my time. And I'm going to hear a voice that's going to say, Kumi, come to me. Come to me. Come to me. Father, thank you for sending Jesus to be the resurrection and the life. That he showed us how to die because we still have to die. We still have to die. He came to die to say, I know what it's like to die. But then he took his life up again to show us that our death is not goodbye. It's not the end. It's not the last. If there is someone today who is not prepared to die, if they don't know you, if you do not belong to them, if they are not yours, I pray that they give their life to you. Raise someone up, touch someone's life, answer someone's questions, but more than anything else, let us know that this is no trouble to you at all. And we're not bothering you, but we will be with you. Comfort us, give us strength, especially when we lose those that we love, and when we face death's chilling waters ourselves, give us courage and strength, because it takes us from here to there. We pray this, Lord Jesus, in your name. Amen. God bless you, folks. The message went a little long today, lots of stories, I guess, but I wish I didn't have so many stories about this kind of incidents in our life. I hope that God will bless you and lead you. And if you have anything ever that you wish to talk with me about or pray about, please let me know. I'm headed over to the hospital right now.
My sweet mother-in-law is there. Maybe they'll let me throw her in the trunk of the car and bring her home. But so good to see you. We're glad that you're here. All right?
Just got a text from Terry. They did some more checking and x-rays today, and they're going to keep her another day.
Okay.
The lungs are still not clear enough.
All right.
Her immune system.
So more hospital time for Beth Evans. Pray for my mother-in-law, Terry's mom. All right? God bless you. Thank you very much.